After nearly 6 months, it comes down to one final race weekend to decide it all. It's almost time for the season finale for Season 2 of the SimGrid VCO World Cup, and of all the places, we couldn't think of a better location. Not too far out of the locality of Nurburgring. The Nurburgring is going to take us twice around the clock this coming weekend, and for qualifying, well, we've got 46 and 47 respective teams over the two splits that we've got racing tonight to decide things for Super Pole. It's Alex Goldschmidt and Andy McEwan back with you this evening. Andy, nearly 6 months in the bag. We've had a great season so far. 4 different winners in both respective splits. Points between the top 5 in split 2, 59 points. The top 5 in split 1, 82 points. We are going to have, it looks like, new champions overall for SimGrid VCO World Cup. But what a journey it's been so far.
Yeah, it's not been bad, has it? It's been really, really good fun joining the World Cup journey this season for the first time for me. And yeah, I've been so impressed with the quality of the racing. Each and every one of the races we've had so far has been an absolute thriller. And in fact, I remember there was a race I seem to recall back at Kyalami last time out that actually clashed with the real world Le Mans 24 Hours. And I found myself far more intrigued and glued to the coverage of the World Cup race than I was the world's greatest motor race. So yeah, really, really high quality. It's been thoroughly entertaining, and as you say, both splits well and truly going down to the wire. It's going to be a good one.
Indeed. We have to say a big thank you, as always, to our partners, VCO, the virtual competition organisation based out of Munich, headed up by CEO Florian Hasper. We also have to say a big thank you to AK Informatica. Between the pair of those two companies, they provided a prize fund worth in excess of around $25,000 US dollars. Of course, we can't do this without the help of Coach Dave Academy and Thrustmaster, who have respectively been the headline sponsor for 2 of the races this season. The first of which was the Thrustmaster 24 Hours of Spa, and then of course the Coach Dave Academy 12 Hours of Kyalami. That's where our man behind Coach Dave Academy, Dave Perel, is actually from, in South Africa. So he was running at Le Mans that weekend, and we were hosting a fantastic race here as well on the SimGrid. But once again, it is going to be down to a Super Pole shootout. For those that have just joined us here on the SimGrid, thank you very much for doing so. You can follow us on all the respective social medias at the SimGrid on Facebook, sim_grid on Twitter, Instagram, the SimGrid as well. And also, if you haven't already, hit the like, share and subscribe button on YouTube. But Andy, looking at it from this perspective, I mean, Simware Pro, we know this team very, very well indeed. They've got a 36-point lead over the team that initially won the season opener at Bathurst, who have kept themselves in the hunt. DV1 Triton Racing, Racing Line Motorsport are in the mix. Sidemax Motorworks, FFS Racing and Sim Racing Masterclass have really managed to get things going, and each of them have either featured in the podium or have taken a race victory this season.
They have, but what's really interesting to me regarding the championship standings, as we can see, consistency normally is what builds championship campaigns, but consistency has been a no-show across this split in the World Cup, hasn't it? We have none of those front-running teams that have managed to execute top 5s or even top 10s in each of the 4 races so far. You take Simware Pro, 15th at Bathurst. You'd have been forgiven after that first race for thinking they were going to be nowhere in the championship challenge, but then they came back a few weeks later at Spa and won. So then you start thinking, okay, they're building a bit of a challenge now. They'll be looking for another good result next time at Donington. 16th was all that they could manage. Then they were back just outside the podium positions at Kyalami, and it's been the same for almost every single team that you can see there at the top of the points. Really, the first team that you could say has been even halfway consistent is Odox Motorsport in 7th place. They've had 3 top 10 finishes, but a DNF at Spa. So consistency's been tricky. It's all about who's had the highest highs and the lowest lows, and ultimately it's Simware Pro that have come out on top in that regard. But Alex, as you know well, there are so many points still available, this being a 24-hour race to round out the season, that mathematically I think there are still 21 teams in Split 1 alone that could still take it, so it's all still wide open.
Yeah, very much the case for Split 2 as well, because Gardi Racing, who won last time out at Kyalami in Split 2, lead the standings at the moment. You also got XL Racing by Henvelten, Blackhawk Racing, NSN Racing, Sim RC endurance racing team who won the Thrustmaster 24 Hours of Spa. They're covered by 59 points, and I would think that from that perspective, we're going to see even more than 21 or so teams in that kind of respect, because looking at it from this, Gardy Racing took the victory. They've had a 4th at Spa, a 21st at the season opener, and then we've also got XL Racing by Henvelten, a 12th at Mount Panorama, a 3rd at the Spa, DNF'd at Donington Park, but finished on the runner-up step of the rostrum last time out. Blackhawk Racing, a DNF on the opening round, a 2nd at Spa, a 20th at Donington, and a 6th at Kyalami. NSN Racing have had 3 top 10 finishes, a 5th, a 4th, and 8th. Rounds 1, 3, and 4 respectively. Sim RC Endurance. I mean, looking at it, I think still with the amount of points that we got on offer, we could have quite a few teams in terms of the competition side of it. And realistically, there are so many teams that are looking to end this season on a high. We know that there are going to be drivers that are going to be going for broke twice around the clock here at the Nurburgring. Just under 3.2 miles, just over 5.14 kilometres. I think if we can, what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and bring in a driver for an interview if possible. And we're going to bring in Killian Ryan Meenan. Killian, a very, very good evening. Thank you very much for joining us in the build-up to qualifying tonight. How's the feeling in the camp?
Yeah, it's good. First of all, hello. Yeah, it's good. We're kind of going into this knowing that we have quite a hefty weight penalty from the previous round at Kyalami, so that's going to be somewhat of a journey in the race to try and work our way through that. We were hoping qualifying might be wet, but it's definitely not going to be. And but yeah, we're fine so far.
I think realistically, you guys are on 176 points, Simware Pro are on 247. There is still a chance, even with the ballast, that there could be an opportunity. It's twice around the clock here at the Nürburgring. It's not the easiest circuit when things goes a little bit wrong, but we do find that the Nürburgring always provides fantastic action.
Yeah, it should be good. I mean, there's double points on offer for this as well, because we have the interval points, and you never know with weather transitions and whatnot. It's not necessarily going to be about raw pace, which we're going to be slightly lacking with the second heaviest weight penalty, but it should be fine. I mean, race wise it will be better than qualifying will, but well, we kind of just have to wait and see what happens and just hope for the best.
Well, I think one of the things that we have always been excited by is one of your driver lineup. Funny enough, that's Michael Tauscher, who's secured pole position twice this season in the Simgrid VCO World Cup. Is he in the car tonight? Please tell me that is so.
Yeah, of course. He is, yeah. He's our strongest qualifier, so it makes sense to put him in each time. We had a bet after Kyalami that if he put it on pole for this race, that I told him I'd FaceTime him or whatever, and I'd eat my own hair. I was so confident it won't happen with the weight. But look, we'll wait and see. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, all the very best of luck to you guys at Sidemax Motorwork FFS Racing. It's been great having you on the grid, and good luck tonight for quality with Michael behind the wheel.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks for everything over the season. It's been a blast.
No problem at all. A big thank you to Killian Ryan Meenan there from Sidemax Motorworks FFS Racing, the 211, currently 4th in the standings here this evening. And realistically, if we can, what we're going to do now, well, Andy, are you back with us, my good friend?
I am, and hopefully sounding a little less echoey. I'm having a couple of technical issues on my end, but yeah, interesting stuff there from Killian. I think they're still quite confident, aren't they, that they can do something here at the Nürburgring, even with the wait. It's a long old race, and I've heard through the grapevine there is a little bit of a threat of rain come Saturday, so that could certainly throw things wide open for those that are carrying weight into this round. So yeah, always an exciting driver and team to watch, and I'm sure that will be the case again this weekend.
Yes, indeed. Well, I think really, without further ado, let's give you an insight on how you have to wrestle a car around here at the Nürburgring. From Weissach to Affalterbach, we're on board the 889 Mercedes AMG GT3 with Alaric Enslin behind the wheel, heading down towards the Haughaken, pulling over 245 kilometers an hour in fifth gear, going into the braking zone for the Haughaken from 100 meters out, down to first gear at around 60 kph on the apex. Now up to second ever so briefly before hitting the brakes into the Mercedes arena. Now up to third gear before dropping down into first gear after putting the anchors on. And look at the amount of curve taken on the left before swinging the car towards the right hand side. Exiting out of the corner, now pulling up into third gear at over 180 kilometers an hour, before pulling fourth gear into the left-hander at Valvoline. Down to third gear at 145 on the apex, then into the right-hander at Ford. Second gear at 95 on the apex, before now pulling out from the corner itself and heading down towards the Dunlop hairpin, increasing the speed and the momentum of the car itself, pulling nearly 230 kilometers an hour in fourth before hitting the anchors once again down to first gear on the Dunlop hairpin. Now building the speed, commitment and momentum and the courage to get through the Michael Schumacher S's rather quickly, and pulls on the rev limiter, bouncing off it before hitting fourth in the middle of the Michael Schumacher S's. Now into the left-hander at Hankook, pulling nearly 230 in fourth, down to second gear at 123 on the speedometer. Then the right-hander at the Bidkurve, before now you really start to wind this GT3 beast up to volume number 11, heading into Advan. Now pulling up into fourth gear, going through at over 225 kilometers an hour through Advan before pulling fifth. You then go into the NGK chicane, down from fifth to third at 160 kph, and then it's the Hyundai N-Kurve that is the last corner to circumnavigate on this nigh on 3.2 mile circuit, as now it's the run to the line here on the Mercedes AMG GT3.
Virtual.
Welcome back, as we are just literally moments away from getting underway with our qualifying session for the fifth and final round of Season 2 of the SimGrid VCO World Cup, here live and uninterrupted with Alex Goldschmidt and Andy McEwan. Andy, this circuit, steeped in motorsport folklore, this particular track has been around since the mid-1980s. It's a staple with the likes of the Eddie GT Masters, amongst others. It really is a driver's track, isn't it?
Yeah, it actually is. It's strange because a lot of sort of old school Formula One circuits that go through a transition, a lot of it through the sort of late 1970s, early 1980s, and became these sort of modern, recognisable Formula One venues that we know today. A lot of them get criticised, don't they, for being too watered down, and you'd think of any of those circuits, the one that sits in the shadow of the Nordschleife would be the one that was universally ridiculed for being a shadow of its former self, but actually it remains a really popular circuit for drivers and for fans of the sport alike. For the drivers, it's got quite a nice flow to it. It's still quite undulating. The average speed is quite high, but then there are still quite a lot of overtaking opportunities, obviously through that first arena section, but there are other places that if you're really feeling brave, you can have a go at getting past someone. And then for the spectators, it offers good long distance views. There are quite a lot of big grandstands as well as open sort of grass banking to go and sit on, and it really does have a little bit of something for everybody, and it's perfect really for endurance racing. It's why things like the GT World Challenge series have their endurance race there, and it's always a really popular event. So a really great circuit, one of my favourites actually over on the continent, and I'm sure that it will provide us with quite a lot to talk to over the course of the next few days.
Yes, I echo that sentiment completely, Andy, because obviously with my nationality being part German as well, I have a true fondness for this track. But we are getting underway with qualifying. So in 20 minutes we'll decide who will be going through into the top 10 Super Pole later on this evening. Thomas Shivik from Full Boost Racing out in the 497 McLaren, making his way through the far part of the circuit. It's really one that has quite a lot of adverse camber at times, especially like going through, say for instance, Valvoline and Ford, and then you've got this interesting sort of like curved straightaway from Ford down to Dunlop. You've got a lot of curb on the inside, but you do see people go a bit brazen up the inside of others, and I have seen it too wide coming out of Dunlop. It's even been at some points nearly 3 abreast, Andy, and that's going to be rather challenging when these drivers go twice around the clock starting from Saturday.
Yeah, it is a circuit that sort of tempts you often into getting stuck in. It's quite a momentum track, so if you end up going sort of side by side with someone and the move doesn't quite stick first time, you really end up delaying each other and allowing the cars behind you to get a monster run on you, and that can sometimes lead to some slightly dicey moments, and the drivers will have to remember come Saturday afternoon that this is a 24-hour race. There's no point in getting involved in fisticuffs in the first couple of hours, really, when there is such a long race and so many points up for grabs over the course of it. So it is a real racer's circuit, but the racers might just have to fight those racing instincts a little bit when we get into the start of the race. This team, though, Gardi Racing, they've been doing quite a lot of racing this season, successful racing as well, because they lead the points. They won last time at Kyalami as well, so Alex, I'm sure they'll be looking to continue that momentum into this all-important championship decider.
Yep, Jakob Osterman behind the wheel of the number 71 Aston Martin. It is a top 5 Aston Martin lockout in Split 2 as we now ride on board. There is a poll in the chat on YouTube saying the number 71 took pole at Kyalami. That was the coach David Canamy. 12 hours of Kyalami. Will they get pole here too? We've got now the votes coming in. So who's going to basically put on pole? Osterman is now making his way through into the Schumacher S's, and it's going to be interesting to see how this car, which has got the full assignment, the thing is that it's not got the full assignment of I'm just having a look here. Yeah, Gardi Racing will have the full. It'll have the full 30 kilos, and I was seeing a little bit earlier on that in practice they were quick. So this car, even with the full amount of ballast, sometimes that can actually be a help, can't it, Andy?
Certainly if it rains, I would say it could be, yes, because it almost makes the car a bit more stable, a bit more planted, and it certainly will negate any disadvantage I think that 30 kilos will have. The trouble they might have is if it is a dry race, 30 kilos might not cost them much over a single lap on low fuel and with a quality setup on, but if it costs them even, 2 or 3 tenths of a second a lap in race trim over a 60-minute race, that might not be too bad. Over a 3-hour race even they could tolerate it, but over 24 hours it just starts to add up a little bit, doesn't it? But their pace at the moment looks strong. They're fastest of the teams that have completed early laps then, and they, I'm sure, will have to improve on that if they're to hold on to that top position. But yeah, the Aston Martins continuing to look strong, as they really have at pretty much every round of the Split 2 season so far. We've had Aston Martins at least contending for the victory in every race so far, and 2 of the 4 races we've had have been won by the British manufacturer. Would not bet against it happening again this weekend.
Very much the case, because Jakob Osterman leads in this session on a 1 minute 53.073. It's actually fractionally ahead by less than a tenth of the number 83 Audi, and that's from Space Pace Esports. They've got Tim Knuvener behind the wheel, as we're actually on the front splitter cam of Alexei Meyer in the 56 Funny Formula Wombats. Aston Martin is about to cross the line, goes P13 ahead of the 999 of Jan Kaminski from KEK Sim Racing. But we've also got the 832, so 2 Aston Martins in the top 3 at the moment. And that is the Digital Automotive Sports, aka DAS. Carlo Delia is behind the wheel of that car and is 2 tenths off the pace of it. Off of provisional pole. Amos Lorito in the 521 from Wheelspin Esports puts it at the top Ferrari in 4th place on a 1 minute 53.301. But as I say, that's Sasha Glatter on cue. Black Hawk Racing goes up to 0.042 of a second ahead of Jakob Osterman. So that puts it as an Aston 1-2, but then quickly Larito now goes into the 1 minute 52s, 1 minute 52.857, and that's pretty impressive pace from the Ferrari there, Andy.
Especially that Ferrari, because the 521 car's best result so far in the World Cup has been 16th, which they scored in the second round at Spa. So, that's not a dissimilar circuit to this, I guess. Not necessarily what you would expect to be a Ferrari track, but Larito really flying at the moment ahead of that 81 Aston Martin, as you said. So that's an interesting dynamic already at the top of the times. The championship leading 71 car, though, of Jan Osterman still 3rd fastest, so that is good. They're at least in the ballpark. That's all they really need to do this weekend, is just sort of hold serve, if you like, not lose too many points to their rivals, and right now they are managing to out-qualify all of them. Audi towards the front now, that's interesting. Paul Simsport there, jumping into 3rd fastest now. In fact, we've got 2 Audis in the top 5, because Jonathan Seville just went 3rd, and then Tim Knuvener in the number 83 Audi jumped into 5th place. This is a good Audi circuit. Traditionally, the mid-engine cars, they really like that first sector in particular. They change direction well, they get off the tight corners well, so yeah, not surprised to see the likes of the Audis and the Ferraris stretching their muscles here in the early stages.
Yeah, we've got another mid-engine rear-wheel drive car here, Rocket Simsport, with Milos Stamenkovic behind the wheel in the number 23 McLaren, just over 6.5 tenths of a second off, just behind the number 42. That's Patrick Nage from FS Racing. So Stamenkovic needs to make a little bit of inroads. It's a very, very capable car, is the McLaren. But as you said, Andy, as again, well, that's one for the books. Jakob Osterman has gone provisional top of the timesheets by, get this, 33 thousandths of a second. So Amos Lorito drops to 2nd position. Then it's Sasha Glatter. So I say that. Tim Knuvener goes back up into provisional top of the timesheets on a 1 minute 52.722. That's what we've had all season long here in the ultra competitive SimGrid VCO World Cup, Andy. That the times have tumbled and the gaps have been literally minuscule between positions, because the top 10 are covered by just over 5.5 tenths of a second as Stamenkovic crosses the line, goes provisional top, 1 minute 52.701.
That is more like it, isn't it then? So the 23 car jumps into contention. Really good to see that team running well as well. But yeah, you're right. These qualifying sessions, it is not uncommon for the fastest times to be separated by virtually nothing. And that makes it really tricky when it comes to getting into this top 10 shootout. Seville goes through and stays in 5th place. But a reminder, this is not for pole position. This is just to lock yourself into that Super Pole session. That was close, wasn't it? Just to lock yourself into Super Pole, which means that if you're in the top 10 at the end of this 20-minute session, you will then go through to Super Pole. You have one flying lap each, which must be taken separately to everyone else, so everyone gets the track to themselves for a lap, and that then sets the grid for the top 10. So because the times are so tight though, Alex, it makes it quite difficult to know whether you're safe. I mean, you could be sat there now with the Rocket Simsport squad, having seen Stankovic set that time, and think, right, okay, we may well be safe, but all it takes is for another handful of teams to find a couple of tenths of a second, and all of a sudden you're outside of that top 10 again. So it means you have to keep attacking in these first qualifying sessions right until the end.
Well, for example, between 10th and 11th at the moment, Wojciech Lukaszek from the 500 Forza Italia PL esports team is 3/100ths outside of the top 10. And Artur Sarnecki from Carbon Simsport Blue. Now, this car has also proven its worth this season, as that's now coming through the Coca-Cola curve. So this could be rather close, as Sarnecki now about to cross the line, goes P6, 2.5 tenths off of the 23 of Stankovic. There's top the timesheets, and we are now just over the halfway point in this qualifying session. Top 10 covered by exactly 0.426 seconds. And of all the teams, that is the number 16, the second place car in the championship. XL Racing by Henvelten. They've got a very safe pair of hands in that car, Maximilian Vollmuth.
Yes, but he will need to find a bit more speed than that, because he's only within that top 10, as you said, by about 3/100ths of a second, just less than that in fact, so they'll definitely be wanting to improve. Tony McEwan there improves in the McEwan Racing Audi to go 33rd, so not troubling the Super Pole session for the time being, but improving a couple of positions. Carlo Delia here in the DAS Aston Martin, 14th fastest. Now this is a car that could potentially jump into that top 10 shootout then. The 832 car has not been troubling the top of the points table, so they, like many other teams who have had a difficult season so far, will just want to end their season on a high. And Alex, that's the other thing we have to factor into this. When we get into the race in particular, yes, there is a championship to be decided, there is a World Cup on the line here, but there are lots of teams who couldn't care less who wins the championship. They just want to try and get themselves a podium or a race win, and if they arrive here with no ballast, which they're likely to, they could be real spoilers amongst the championship fight, couldn't they? That's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yes, indeed, and twice around the clock here in the Eifel region, the unpredictable weather, all that kind of stuff as well. That's going to be, it's also the fact they're going to get money. If they get, depending on the positions, if they're the highest placed manufacturer in the whole race, they get a certain amount of money coming to them. So yeah, the teams aren't, they're not going to give us stuff about the championship. They want to go for the prize money that's on offer. But also for here, in the AK Informatica side of things, with their backing for Split 2, there's vouchers, there's there's like the overtake of the season and that kind of thing, where AK Informatica, I think we're even giving up something like an RTX processor to give away this season, and that's going to be decided at the end of this 24 hours. Carlo Delia in the meantime goes P6, 0.216 off of Stankovic from Rocket Simsport, but now the driver on the bubble is the number 43 of Visic, and the top 10 now, Andy, covered by just over 3.5 tenths.
Yeah, and what I like about that top 10 is that we've got 5 different makes of car in there, 4 of them in the top 4 actually. We've got McLaren, Audi, Aston Martin and Ferrari in the top 4 positions, and then 2 Mercedes AMGs towards the back end of that top 10 as well. So it doesn't seem as though one particular car has the edge here this weekend. Again, interesting given the fact that it's been Aston Martins that have dominated the championship. So we could well see a few things getting turned on their head here in this final race of the season. FS Racing now, then we turn our attention to. They're 21st in the qualifying session, they're 12th in the points, but there's quite a gulf between the sort of top 5 teams in the points and the rest, really. So FS Racing, they seem to be struggling a little bit for pace here. Patrick Nage is at the wheel of this number 42 Aston Martin. We'll see if he improves this time, but realistically, I think breaking into that top 10 in the points might be the best they can hope for this weekend. Through the final corner then, out onto the pit straight. Crucial to get a good exit from there, because that carries your speed all the way along past the pits, slightly downhill into that first corner. Nage does improve into 18th position, so only gains a couple of spots. He gained less than a tenth of a second all told, and I think he's going to do really well here, isn't he, to get into that top 10. Interestingly as well, Alex, Max Vollmuth, who you mentioned earlier on, was just about clinging on to that top 10 spot. Well, the car that is second in the championship, has unfortunately now been demoted to 11th. So if they're to make Super Pole, then Maximilian Vollmuth needs to find an improvement and needs to do so quickly.
There is another car that's actually making its way up the order here, Andy, and it's the 556 of Butlerpal Motorsports Bentley Continental with Guillaume Claude Grobler behind the wheel. Has just gone 13th and is less than half a second off Stamankovic's best lap in this session. And what's more interesting is the fact that the McLaren and the Audi at the top of the timesheets are split by just 21 thousandths of a second. We've got just under 5.5 minutes of this qualifying session. There's Maxime Chasset in the number 737 Aston Martin from Optimum Motorsport. Currently 17th, 6 tenths off of Stamankovic. I mean, like you were saying with regards to Patrick Nage, is 6 tenths down off of Stamankovic, but needs to put in at least another 3 tenths of a second to get into that top 10. And that could put, if he did that, that would put him provisionally P8 going into the Super Bowl. But there's a lot of drivers, as you said, that we've had this discussion already about. They just want to get prize money. They want to get bragging rights. They just don't really care about who wins the championship, just as long as they get a good result to finish the season with.
Yeah, precisely, and they'll still be gunning for Super Pole positions, and if they make it into Super Pole, they could knock a championship contending car out of it. Sasha Glatter, for example, is clinging on to a top 10 spot right now. The number 81 Black Hawk Racing Aston Martin, which is third in the championship, is only 9th in the session and less than a tenth of a second away from being demoted. Maxime Chasset, meanwhile, if that didn't invalidate the lap, then I will be amazed. He was very wide over the grass coming out of the chicane. He comes across the line, and the time doesn't improve. I guess it wouldn't have done anyway after that mistake, but that was a slightly scrappy end to the lap. Alex Radizzi, meanwhile, coming into the final third of the lap in his Mercedes, number 166, which again is not really a factor for the championship. The only Mercedes that we've seen do well this season really in Split 2 is the 741, the Cloud Racing Team Mercedes. That's the only one inside the top 15 or so in points, but Radizzi looking to try and consolidate this top 10 position at the moment. Then you can see him on the left there in the scoring tower, 8th fastest right now, but only safe by about half a tenth of a second. So Alex, he'll be looking to try and improve if he can.
Yeah, currently about 3 tenths off, and it is looking good. There is a yellow flag out on the circuit, but Radizzi heads towards the line. It could have been... he's gone 6th. But there is one car... there's another car. They seem to be cropping up every so often. We've got just over 3 minutes to go. Jan Kaminski in the 999 KEK Sim Racing Aston Martin is literally less than half a tenth off the bubble of getting into the top 10. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, Lukaszek has been starting to improve, but the 500 not having a great run of luck. Chasset, I mean, yeah, he did a bit of grass cutting with that front splitter going into the coming out of the NGK chicane, but this could be a better lap from the 737 from Optimum Motorsport as long as he makes it neat and tidy coming out of the chicane, which looks to be the case, into the Coca-Cola corner, the final corner. Currently 19th at the moment, 6 tenths down. Is there going to be a significant improvement up to P16 on a 1 minute 53.160? So that car is now within a tenth and a half being into the outside the top 10. Effectively.
Yeah, 16th on the grid then is where they would start. If you don't make this top 10 shootout, then your position within this session is your grid position for the race. And that first corner can be pretty tricky, can't it, sometimes? So starting mid-grid is not ideal, really. Artur Czarnecki here then in the 666 Carbon Simsport Blue McLaren needs to try and find a bit more time then again, just to confirm himself as a top 10 runner. Comes through the chicane towards the Coca-Cola curve. He's on a decent lap by the looks of it, a quarter of a second off the fastest time, but if he found another tenth of a second, that could leapfrog him into the top 5. So let's see what he can do. Across the line then goes Czarnecki. He does find that chunk of time, almost finds all of the quarter of a second, and goes third. So 2 McLarens now in the top 3, and Alex, the top 3 cars in the session are all mid-engine cars. In fact, 5 of the top 6 in the session are mid-engine cars, sort of illustrating that point I made before about how the mid-engine cars seem to like the Nürburgring, and certainly based on this qualifying session, that seems to be the case.
Right, Amos Lorito could be gunning for a provisional top of the timesheets. 5th place at the moment for the Wheelspin Esport 521 Ferrari. As it comes across the line, goes P3. Top 4 now covered by 69 thousandths of a second. And Visic, unfortunately, not able to improve. But that was one hell of a lap from Amos Lorito from Wheelspin Esport. Top 4 covered by, get this, 7/100ths of a second. Andy McEwan, that is absolutely ridiculous. As we've got the number 56 has just brought out the yellow flag. That is the funny Formula Wombats car that has had Alexei Meyer behind the wheel as we're into the final 20 seconds. But who would have thought it for the final round of the SimGrid VCO World Cup here at the Nürburgring that we'd see split 2 for the first bit of qualifying covered by just under 7/100ths for the top 4.
Yeah, that's the kind of separation we've seen in Split 1, admittedly, but Split 2, as competitive as it's been, that is especially close as it stands at the moment, although I think we've just had another improvement there, have we, because Tim Knuvner has improved slightly at the front of the field, so that stretches the gap slightly, but it means that the 83 Audi is now fastest in the session. Tinko van der Velde there, we saw briefly, he was the highest placed of the Ferraris in the championship for Side Max Motorworks, but not going to make the top 10. Caught a glimpse there of the 83 Audi that has gone provisionally fastest in this session and locked itself into the top 10 shootout. But what can Tinko van der Velde do? This car then on 159 points. It's just less than 100 points off the top of the championship table. And of course, Gardi Racing are looking strong in this qualifying session, so unlikely maybe that they would be able to challenge. But making it a little bit further up the order than 23rd would certainly help their cause. Slight improvement there for McCofferton, got it right first time, with Tinko van der Velde about to come through. 23rd is where he was, and it is an improvement into 19th place. But Alex, I have to say, of the championship contenders, it is the points leading car that's doing the best, isn't it?
Jakob Osterman's absolutely nailed that car to the tarmac here at the Nürburgring for the 5th and final round, as Patrick Nage from FS Racing was running up as high as 19th in the session, down into 24th is the number 42 Aston Martin. They're currently still 12th in the standings on 119 points. Into the NGK chicane as gets a bit tail happy after using a lot of curb there, but that concludes the session. So the way things stand, we have a top 10 effectively decided. We'll get everything confirmed a little bit later on, but it's Tim Knuvner from the 83 of Space Base Esports. So session is concluded. Milos Stamankovic from Rocket Sim Sports in the 2nd place McLaren 23. Amos Lorito being the only Ferrari in the top 10, 3rd place. Artur Zarnecki, Jakob Osterman from Gardi Racing, the points leader in 5th, 2/10 off. Jonathan Seville from Pulse Sim Sport. Alex Radizzi from Team Vito. Kevin Braun as well, which is the number 76. That's the Sim RC Endurance team, a race winner this year. Visic in the 43 Slow Racing Team Sim Racing Cockpit, Mercedes, and Carlo Delia in the 832 DAS Digital Automotive Sports. Aston Martin make it through to Superpole a bit later on, but that was crazy. I think we're going to have something different in Split 1 altogether, aren't we, Andy?
Yes, but equally close, I suspect, given how insanely close the qualifying sessions have been so far in the SimGrid VCO World Cup this season. I mean, almost every single one of our top 10 shootouts have been decided by next to nothing, but actually the initial qualifying sessions have been arguably even closer. And here we can see the cars on their outlaps now, then just making their way out in the Split 1 qualifying session. And Alex, as intriguing as the Split 2 championship is, Split 1 for me is really where it's at, because we've got a really fascinating championship showdown here. A few more teams, realistically, I think, that will feel that they're in contention for this. And while Simware Pro do have a decent championship advantage of 46 points, as we've said, there are an awful lot of points available in this race. It could still all change. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing, first of all, who makes the top 10, but where in amongst all of that our championship contenders end up.
Well, it looks like the love's coming from one of the Unicorns of Love. Niles Klinkmüller currently in the chat, as Bastian Richter is behind the wheel of the number 14 Unicorns of Love Aston Martin, currently 10th in the standings on 155 points. They were 2nd at Spa, 23rd at Donington, 14th at Bathurst, and a DNF for the Aston Martin crew back at Kyalami. And realistically, looking at it from this perspective, 4 different winners from 4 different races. The poll is still going for split 2 for Gardi Racing. There's been 125 votes and 76% say that they will not take pole for the final round of the championship. Well, we still got the Super Pole. They qualified P5 out of the first 20-minute session. But Bastian Richter just trying to... looks like one of the cones got knocked asunder exit stage left there, didn't they?
Yeah, I think Robbie Stapleford sent that one flying, didn't he? He's the car ahead in the number 22 McLaren. So I noticed in the Split 2 qualifying session, the drivers on their outlap are taking as wide a line as possible into that final corner. But yeah, Robbie possibly took it a little bit too far to the extreme. There's another cone there that's gone flying through turn 1 as well. So even on their outlaps, the Split 1 drivers looking to absolutely maximise what they've got. But this is why they're competing in Split 1. These are the best of the best. They know how to extract the absolute maximum from their cars on each and every lap that they turn on the track, be that a practice session, a qualifying session, or a 24-hour race. And that is what's made it so enjoyable to follow them over the course of the season. We're following Bastian Richter at the moment, then the number 14, Aston Martin, for the Unicorns of Love, which sits down in 10th place in the championship, but they're within 100 points of the championship leader. And Alex, I would say coming into a 24-hour race, because of the bonus points that are on offer periodically throughout the race, as well as of course the 80 for winning it, I'd say if you're within 100 of the championship lead, I wouldn't give up just yet, because there's always a chance that you could have a really good race and the points leader could have an absolute shocker, and you might just be able to get yourself back into it. So Bastian Richter and the Unicorns of Love, I'm sure, won't be giving up just yet.
Yeah, also very interesting that Robbie Stapleford has actually been promoted from the Rocket Simsport Split 2 crew because of strong performances in SRO esports as of recently. So a good promotion for Robbie Stapleford. It now gives him a bit of a bigger stage to perform on. We know he's quite capable in his own right, as he absolutely barrels his way through over the curves through the NGK chicane. And it was the first car out onto the circuit. So the top 10 are going to be the ones that are really going to be the main bone of contention tonight, as Bastian Richter goes provisional top of the timesheets on a 1 minute 52.434. Then it's DV1 Triton Racing. They've got Mateusz Tuskovic behind the wheel of that one. Alban Bouquet in the 601 Esport Performance Racing Team. Audi has just gone P3. Eamon Murphy from oh, hang on a second, Yaz Heat has just gone second. So at the moment, we've got an Aston Martin leading a McLaren, an Audi, a Bentley, 2 further McLarens, 2 further Astons, another Aston, thanks to the number 92, Alexandre Vromont in the number 92 car. That is the AAA Esports entry. And it looks like Yaroslav Shevardolov is behind the wheel of the Simware Pro car in the 41, currently P7 at the minute. So Vromont, Michal Nowakowski in the Carbon Simsport 720 McLaren. Michal Kopera was in 10th, but has just been deposed by, of all people, guess who? Michael Tauscher. And the funny thing is that Tauscher's just been knocked out of the top 10, and we are only, Andy, just over 5 minutes into this session.
Yeah, but that's going to be the story, I think, isn't it, throughout the entire session? And already the pace is really strong. We've got a fastest time by Bastian Richter of a 152.4, just casually going 2 tenths faster than the fastest time in the Split 2 session on his first effort. So we can expect the times to tumble even more, I think, as we go deeper and deeper into the session. So yeah, really impressive pace being set out there. Niels Noyaks, we saw there, going second in the BMW. At number 62 team have had some good results in SRO competition recently as well. BMW Team G2 Esports, they are 9th in the championship at the moment. Certainly don't count them out from winning it. The question then, I guess, at the moment is, where are the championship leaders? Simware Pro, the number 41 Aston Martin. Well, we have got Yaroslav Shevardolov in the top 10. He is at the back end of that top 10 in 10th place. He is 6 1,000ths of a second faster than... Oh, no, he's not. He's just improved. As I was making the point, he jumps into 8th place. So there goes Shevardolov across the line. Makes that a little bit more secure for the championship leading Aston Martin. But these are the fine margins, Alex, that we're going to be dealing with all session, I think.
Yeah, I think Cody Pride just came a bit wayward going through the NGK chicane there and then started flashing the headlights. Don't know what that was all about, but never mind. Yeah, I mean, also BMW Team G2 Esports Sprint Cup Season 3 champions. When myself and David Christie were commentating on that, and I know that you've been doing Sprint Cup Season 4 alongside David for a lot of the season. I think Chaz Draycott has also made a brief appearance. Chris Hartfeld, a regular here in the sim grid, the number 32. He is currently 20th. We'll make that 21st as more times are changing. We're 13 minutes in, and of all the people, here we go, Tobias Pfeffer. And that is the reigning champions, the 157 car, if memory serves me correctly. They've had a third, a 16th, a DNF, and a 12th place. Tobias Pfeffer has just gone provisional top of the timesheets by, get this, Andy, nearly half a second ahead of Dennis Schoeninger.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. We've been dealing in hundreds and thousands so far, haven't we? And for that to be nearly half a second, although Robbie Stapleford now halves that gap because he brings the number 22 McLaren back into second place now. Bastian Richter, who we're on board with, stays in third, but also gets within a quarter of a second of pole position, or fastest in the session, I should say. But that is seriously impressive pace, and I would say that Pfeffer has now done enough, you would have to say, to lock that car into the top 10 shootout later on in the evening. Dominic Goltz here for Revolution Sim Racing Blue, the number 44 Aston Martin makes its way up the hill then, and where are they currently sitting? They are 21st in the times right now, but within a second of the fastest time so far. 20th place there for Shintz, and then Cody Pride, who we saw in that Porsche. It's interesting, Alex, that you mentioned Sprint Cup, because Cody actually stood in to do a race for the team that won this season's Sprint Cup, the Random Pasta Bowl Porsche squad, stepped in for them at Zandvoort and got a really good performance there. So we know Cody is rapid in the Porsche, although he's just been demoted to 20th place. Goltz, though, absolutely flying, maybe overdrives a little bit there into the chicane, and I think, Alex, that might just cost him some time.
Yeah, he did have to circumnavigate his way past a Mercedes that was just in front, as there's Nars Noyox coming through the NGK chicane, throwing the car in. And we'll see if the number 62, they've had a race victory this season. Andrea Miato in P8. Nars Noyox goes P6. Great lap from the BMW. One of the it's the most successful brand at the Nürburgring Nordschleife itself. So you would say that BMW is going to look pretty handy. And now the fact that BMW Team G2 Esports don't have any ballast, that is going to really help their opportunities. They're 9th in the standings, 159 points. Zahiat Essa in the 777 Sim Racing Masterclass car. They won last time out at the Coach Dave Academy 12 Hours of Kyalami back just a few weeks ago. Dominic Goltz hopefully might be able to get an inroad, but looking at things, it's Tobias Pfeffer in the 157 car that is leading the way. Robbie Stapleford in second, Bastian Richter, Michal Nowakowski, Dennis Schoeninger, Nars Noyox, Mike Noble in the 123 FFS Racing. Then it's Tuskovic for DV1 Triton Racing, Andrea Miato for the 164 GTWR by RHG Academy, Aston Martin, and then it's the 601 Alban Bouquet running at the top 10, covered by just under 7/10 of a second, and the driver that is in, good to see the Greek Souvlaki squad are back. In the number 34 we got Vincent Ebrich behind the wheel of that. There's Dale McCormack from Williams Esports, currently running in 33rd position in the number 5. Not been an easy season for them though, has it, Andy?
No, it's not been particularly. A few things outside of their control have gone wrong. A few things within their control have gone wrong as well, it must be said. But again, another team I think that will just be looking to end their season on as high a high as they possibly can. Really interesting to see now the way that the times have developed over the course of the session. Remember, only 5 minutes or so ago, we were saying that Yaroslav Shvertalov had put the 41 car up into 8th place, the championship leading Simware Pro car. He's 24th place now, and there is only one of the top 5 cars in the championship that currently is making it into that top 10 shootout, and that is the 111 of Mateusz Tuskovic that sits second in the points for DV1 Triton Racing. So they at the moment look set to certainly start their weekend off in a much better fashion than those that they're fighting for the championship with. But the 41 car is all the way down there, well outside the top 10 now. They've just dropped another place. Shivertalov down into 25th position. Racing Line Motorsport, the 191 car, they're only 23rd. They're third in the points. Sidemax Motorworks, the 211, they're 24th. So you've got all of the championship contenders outside the top 20 at the moment, Alex, with the exception of DV1 Triton. If Tushkovitz can get that Bentley into the top 10 shootout, that could be big for the championship.
Yes, very much the case as we ride on board in cockpit with Jan Willem van Ollen in the number 38 Aston Martin heading through the NGK chicane, bouncing over the curbs left, right and centre through into the Coca-Cola corner. And we'll look to cross the line very, very shortly. Out of the final corner, drops out of the top 20. Will the Dutch driver improve? Goes P9, great effort there.
There you go, helps both press the on button. Yes, great effort that, and you won't be the only one looking to try and find that sort of improvement, I'm sure. Jesse Kauppinen, we know we've seen better from him than 37th so far. So the Gripax Engineering team in their Mercedes, they're racing Ferraris elsewhere in things like the SimGrid Sprint Cup. Kauppinen, though, improves the Mercedes quite a lot there, up into 22nd place. So he now sits only a couple of tenths of a second away from making that top 10 shootout, with still about a third of the session to go. Marco Bischoff here in the ambassadors for Renvelt and Aston Martin, number 995. He makes his way down the hill as well, looking to try and wrestle that car a little bit closer to the top 10. That top 10 that is rounded out at the moment by Andrea Miato in the 164 Aston Martin. He's got just over 100th of a second in hand right now over the 601 Audi of Alban Bouquet. So extremely tight when it comes to that cut-off point to make it into the top 10. You can just see it there at the top of your timing tower on the left-hand side of the screen. But Bischoff, if he can find a tenth and a half, he could be right in that top 10 conversation as well. It is so close. 10th place Miato is only about 2 tenths faster than 22nd place Jesse Kauppinen. It is ridiculous how tight that midfield is.
I mean, I've just been looking at the timing screens, Andy, from 6th to 11th. Less than a 6 1,000th shy of a tenth and a half separates Niles Noyox and Alban Bouquet in 11th, and that has quickly changed because Marco Bischoff has just gone into the top 10. How's about that one?
Not bad at all, but can he keep it? Because he is, well, he's got an enormous sort of 15 thousandths of a second, actually, over 11th place Miato at the moment, so that could very much still change. Now, Nicholas Huber might have a part to play in all of this as well, because the Rutronic e-Racing Audi is 15th. He's on a good lap at the moment, and only needs to find a tenth of a second to put himself into that top 10. You've got Mike Noble up there in 8th position. Now, Tushkovitz just improved to 7th, so the DV1 Triton Bentley improves by 1 extra position. Huben a little bit messy there through the chicane, maybe, as that cost him a shot at the top 10. Let's find out. Out of the final corner, the start-finish line comes up pretty quickly. 15th place for Huben, becomes 8th ahead of Mike Noble, knocks Bischoff out of the top 10, and still, Alex, there are plenty more that could improve into that top 10. This is brilliant.
Okay, just over 5 minutes to go in this final initial part of qualifying for the 5th and final round of the SimGrid VCO World Cup, the 24 hours of the Nurburgring. Schoeninger is looking rather racy. He's looking the best part of nearly 3 tenths up. He's going to come across the line. P2 goes to within a tenth and a bit of Tobias Pfeffer, and what's more, that is an Audi 1-2 on German home soil. Vincent Ebrich for Zenith goes up into P14. But Eric Neath in the Real Racing Club with Schinkenwagen in the 125 could be gunning for the top 10. Heading through Advan, very brightly coloured roof bonnet and the back part of the tailgate with the rear wing there on that car. You won't exactly miss that in the dark, I can tell you that much. Through the NGK chicane, now through the Coca-Cola corner. He must have just aborted that. He looks like he's aborted that lap, but he could still improve. But Alexander Formont could improve as well. But looking at it from this perspective, Andy, we've seen the likes of Van Ommen, Bischoff, Miato, Bouquet. They've all been dumped out of the top 10 unceremoniously. And here comes Michał Nowakowski once again for Carbon Sim Sport. Is he going to improve from 5th position No, well, that's his best lap so far, but he hasn't improved in terms of the position in this, but he's still in the top 10 with just over 3.5 minutes to go. I can't predict who is going to be in the lower half of the top 10, let alone those that are in the top half of it.
Yeah, I think if you're outside of the top 5 at the moment, you are not safe, because 6th place Niels Nyox is only a 10th of a second clear of the drop zone, isn't he? So, yeah, those Nyox, Tushkovic, Huben, Noble, Bischoff, they all need to keep pounding round just to try and hold on to a position in the top 10 shootout. Now, Vincent Elbrick here in the Zenith Aston Martin, much neater this time through the final chicanes, and the 34 car might just be a challenger there. Needs to find a 10th of a second to get into the top 10 shootout. Looks like he might be on course to do it then. Elbrick out of the final corner, across the line. Yes, just about. He knocks Bischoff back out again now. So Bischoff in the 995 is down to 11th place. Mike Noble is now on the bubble, and Alban Bouquet on another hot lap here. Looks like this might just be enough, but as we've seen, Alex, a lot of drivers have been on good laps that have then gone away from them in those final few corners. That chicane is really difficult to get right. So easy to throw away a promising lap in those final couple of corners.
It's especially if you take a bit too much of a commitment through the and use too much curbing, that could unsettle the back of the car, especially the rear tyres. And with the fact it's we're qualifying at like 7 o'clock at night, so the temperature is going to drop as well, the pressures are going to drop, and a whack on the curbs could possibly give you a bit more traction issues, let's say, as Bouquet now about to cross the line, currently P16, P11, but nevertheless still has 2 laps in the bag because he crossed it with about 1 minute and 58 seconds to go.
He missed out, Alex, by 3/1000ths of a second. I mean, that is blink of the eye stuff, isn't it?
Well, 6/1000 between 10th and 12th. I mean, that's. I mean, in the words of John McEnroe, you cannot be serious. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. This is how hell-bent these drivers are getting into that position of being in the top 10 and having an opportunity. And you and I, we pretty much, since round 2 at the Thrustmaster 24 Hours of Spa-Francorchamps, we've seen firsthand that you might be first on the road in this session, but come Superpole, it completely changes and can be turned upside down on its head.
Absolutely right. We've seen cars line up on pole position having barely scraped into the top 10 shootout, because that top 10 shootout is a completely different session. You don't get 20 minutes to warm up, cycle for a few laps, get into a rhythm. You get one shot. If you make a mistake, if you invalidate it, that's it. You don't get to try again. So it is actually quite common, isn't it, to see cars that were 8th, 9th, 10th in the initial qualifying session going up there and challenging for pole position in the shootout, and bit of traffic. That wasn't ideal for Marco Bischoff. That will have been a distraction, if nothing else, coming out of the final corner. He will have time for one more lap. He's still improving. Is it enough? Bischoff, no, stays in 12th position. Eamon Murphy now the man that we turn our attention to, the Yasheet Pirelli McLaren. He too will get one more shot at this, but is this lap going to be enough to get him into the top 10? Out of the final corner comes the McLaren. 15th place at the moment then for the 149 car, could do with improving, and it does, but it's not quite enough. It's exactly the same lap time as Alban Bouquet, so we've got 2 drivers now who are 3/1000ths of a second away.
Hang on. Marek Shins has just jumped to 8th. So Mike Noble has been dumped out of the top 10 as the checkered comes out for the session. What? And Mike Noble, he is powerless to do anything about it. I don't think. I mean, the thing is that Murphy has another chance. So does, I think it was, it's crazy. Bischoff is not going to make it into the top 10. He's invalidated his lap time. Eamon Murphy, let's stay with him for the moment. He's out of Dunlop. Well, it's out of well, this is actually, he's just come out of Ford. He's now going into Dunlop. The 92 has just brought out the yellow flags. That's AAA Esports. But Eamon Murphy could be at the dying moments. Nicholas Hooven at the moment is currently P9. Vincent Ebrich currently 10th place. And it's a foregone conclusion that Tobias Pfeffer in the 157 from the current reigning champions, the outgoing champions, come the end of this round, I think, depending on what happens this coming weekend. But you never do count the champions out Eamon Murphy now out of Warsteiner or Bidkurve, going through into Advan. This looks to be a very, very calm and composed lap by the 149 Yazhik Pirelli McLaren 720S through the NGK chicane. He's a 10th up at the moment, so this is going to be close. If he's a 10th up, this could put him in the top 6 positions out of the final corner. Eamon Murphy rushes towards the line, and it is P5! That's a brilliant lap at the dying death, and he puts it P5, and that puts out Vincent Ebrich. Nicholas Huben scrapes through into Super Pole for Rutronic E-Racing by the skin of his virtual Nomex, but my goodness, Eamon Murphy there, Andy, was on fire.
That was super impressive. I actually thought he'd made a mistake through the chicane, but he must have just taken the ideal amount of curb. Full commitment through there, that's for sure. But yeah, to not just sneak into the top 5, to catapult himself up there into the top 5. Sorry, not just sneak into the top 10, I should say, but he made top 5 overall. And yeah, that knocks the 34 Aston Martin out. It means that Nicholas Huben made it in the end then by, a couple of hundredths of a second or so. So virtually nothing in it once again, not just near the front, but crucially to make it into that top 10. And as we made the point, Alex, making it into the top 10, that is a big part of the battle for pole position, because then you give yourself a chance. That's all you need, a chance at pole position. And there are 10 drivers who I'm sure are going to be nervously anticipating that top 10 shootout a little while later. Brilliant stuff there.
Indeed, and it looks like we're hopefully going to be going to another interview. We've got Raymond Mooney, so Andy, I'll hand this one over to you.
Yes, so we saw Zahir Essa out in the Big Bentley just now in that most recent session then, and we do indeed have Raymond, his teammate then, ready to jump in and have a chat with us. Let's drag Raymond in. Raymond, thank you very much for joining us here this evening. You've just been watching on as Zahir was out there in the car. What did you make of that qualifying session?
It was tough. He done really well, I think, because we're carrying our full ballast, so 30 kilos isn't easy here, and he done really well. I think P21 we didn't expect to be anywhere near the top, so no, that was really good, really impressive.
It's a long old race coming up, obviously 24 hours, double points essentially up for grabs, because you've got the 80 for winning, but then there are 40 points available for being in the lead at certain points of the race as well. So you're very much still in championship contention, I think it's fair to say. How much of your attention and your focus is on that points battle, or are you just here looking to try and enjoy it and get the best result you can?
I think we just need to try and enjoy it, because we're going to be struggling, I think, especially when it's going to be wet, that we are quite slow in comparison with other cars. So if we get lucky with the pit stops and the wet weather, then we might end up doing well. But no, we just need to try and enjoy it, I think, and hope for the best. That's all we can really do.
Yeah, there is a sort of irony, isn't there, about the fact that the car nicknamed the Boatley seems to run and hide as soon as it gets a bit damp out on track. But in the dry, this isn't a terrible circuit for the Bentley historically. It's that weight, though, isn't it, that is hurting you. Where specifically is it hurting you, do you think, in lap time?
It's mostly turning, so in the wet you need a really good front end. So I think that's why our dry pace isn't so bad, because you can make the setup work well. But when it comes to the wet weather, the front end won't go in. It's really, really bad when the tyres go as well. I think we're just really going to be just sort of driving around on our own, hoping that other people, fail at what they're doing, and we hopefully do well at what we're doing.
Thankfully, you've done pretty well earlier on this season, as well as the win last time at Kyalami. You had a top 5 at the start of the season at Bathurst. So I guess looking back at the way that the season's gone, you've got to be pretty happy, actually. It's been a pretty strong performance all round.
Yeah, no, it's been okay. I mean, not one race up until Kyalami went our way. We had, I think the first stint in Bathurst, we were about 2 laps down after an incident. So Donington went really badly as well with the turn 1 incident. So not really any of them went well. And then Kyalami came and everybody done really well. I obviously wasn't there, so maybe I'm the bad omen. But so we're just hoping for another race quite like that. To be fair, how bad we've done, we're really lucky to be sitting P5 in a championship. I don't know how that's worked, but no, we just need to take it for what it is and see where we can end up. At least it's not the old ballast. We would have been facing a lot more, I think.
Yeah, that's for sure. The slight reduction of ballast this season has helped teams like you to remain a little more competitive, I guess. Final question then, the start of the race on Saturday. First of all, who's going to be in the car? And second of all, how nervous do you think that driver might be? Because starting 21st here at the Nürburgring can be tricky, can't it?
Yeah, it's going to be me. So the last time I was in the car, obviously, I was a bit cautious, and that ended up, putting us in more trouble. So I just need to see where T1. I think if I can get through T1 and T2 all right, then it just depends on everybody's behaviour and obviously the weather, because we don't know whether it's going to be wet or not. So it could just be a guess. But I don't know. We just need to see how it goes. Like, it'll obviously be quite nerve-wracking, but it's exciting as well. We all, everybody should sort of experience it at one point. We considered putting Amir in and just bulldoze his way to the front, but I think his times doesn't quite help him. So I'm getting the poison chalice this time round.
Excellent stuff. Well, we're looking forward to seeing how the start and indeed the rest of your 24-hour race goes. Raymond, thanks for joining us. Best of luck for Saturday.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Well, Alex, interesting to hear the thoughts there of Raymond, particularly on that race start. It seems daft, doesn't it, to say that in a 24-hour race, the first couple of corners could make or break your race, but that is so true, especially given how tight the first sequence of corners is here at the Nürburgring. Of course, the way to avoid all of that, in theory, is to qualify on the front row, and that is now the conversation we're about to start having as we move into our 2 top 10 shootouts.
Yes, indeed. I think when Raymond actually had a bit of a laugh at his own expense, saying, yeah, I must have been the bad omen. No, I don't think so at all. Sometimes it could just be a bit of bad luck, a bit of misfortune. But yeah, we've got 10 cars ready for Split 2 Super Pole to decide the top 10 for the 5th. So effectively the format is as follows. So each team will have an out lap, a flying lap and a cool down lap. So every single driver needs to complete all 3 of them. We have had it before where people have had a bit of a disaster in the flying lap. Let's just take Mount Panorama for instance. I'm going to leave it on that one. But we have our first car out. So it is Digital Automotive Sports with Carlos Delia that will be the first of 10 cars out here tonight at the Nürburgring, and he's already gone off. What on earth was that? I hate to think that an Aston Martin V8 Vantage GT3 Andy was going rally crossing, heading through Ford, Valvoline and into Ford.
I'll be honest, I only caught the end of it because I was going through my notes and getting everything ready for the qualifying session, thinking, oh, it's only the out lap, nothing exciting is going to happen now. But I just out the corner of my eye saw Carlo. He was weaving the car so aggressively back and forth because, of course, you only get 1 out lap as opposed to a couple of warm-up laps that you might have had in the previous qualifying session. You only get 1 lap to get those tyres up to temperature, and I think he may have overdone it a tad and lost control going down into the corner. But that was well saved, but not an ideal start to his setup for the qualifying session.
Yeah, I've just seen in the Tarek Adams gone new strap for warmer tyres. Tortellini's put his 2 cents in, and so has Hamada Equisi. I think everyone's had a bit of a laugh at Carlo Delia's expense, but now is where it really comes through into fruition. So Carlo Delia will be the first driver to set the benchmark here in Super Bowl for Split 2. The Aston Martin makes its way out of the Coca-Cola curve now across the start-finish line to start the first of 10 hot laps in Super Bowl for Split 2. Hard on to the brakes just past the 100-metre marker board into the Haughaken before then switching the car to the right-hand side before turning in for the Mercedes Arena. And Tortellini's just said in the chat, yeah, we've all been there. And I'm sure, Tortellini, that you've had your fair share of dramas on an outlap for qualifying as well. Through out of the Mercedes Arena. And now we'll head towards Valvoline. And this is where the camber really comes into its own here, Andy, because you've got a bit of an inside camber here going through the left-hander at Valvoline before a bit more going through into Ford. But then Dunlop seems to have the most aggressive inline camber, and that slopes towards the right-hand side.
It does, and that means that you can really carry that speed in. We're about to see it here. It's a downhill braking zone, which is tricky, but then you can sort of let the banking catch you. 2 apexes they make out of it, really. They clip the apex early, drift out in the middle of the road, and then cut back to the second apex. Carry as much speed up the hill, because you're now climbing and climbing and climbing. Bit wide there through the Schumacher S's. That wasn't ideal, really. And that again just cost you a bit more momentum. You're still climbing at this point now up towards one of, if not the highest point on the circuit. And now the descent begins again. You've got the Nordschleife just to your left there, the other side of these trees. But we're not venturing out there tonight. And it is night. Look, it is gone 8 PM now in sim time. So the track conditions will be improving. It will be getting cooler and cooler with every car that goes out there. That will certainly benefit those running later. Not a great lap this though. Another mistake there for the Aston Martin as it comes through the chicane. I don't expect this, Alex, to be a pole position time.
No, out of the final corner from Digital Automotive Sports, Carlo Delia in the 8:32. Aston Martin puts in the first benchmark. 1 minute 53.346 around this 3.2 mile circuit here. Yuri Atak Visic from SRT Sim Racing cockpit. The number 43 Mercedes, 9th in the precursor session of 20 minutes. Now have to try and beat a 1 minute 53.346 as Carlo Delia now on his cool-down lap. We'll have Sim RC Endurance up next as Visic comes across the line, and it's just gone close to 8:05 in the evening. The track temperature is about 3 to 4 degrees Celsius cooler than it was in the first session a little bit earlier on. And now through into the Mercedes arena. Enough, glad that we've got a Mercedes in, well, one of two Mercedes in this top 10 shootout for Super Pole for the 24 hours of the Nurburgring that kick starts off this coming Saturday. So in just over 36 hours time, we're going twice around the clock. As Visic going through Valvoline into the right-hander here at 4, tries to turn the car in, looking to be a little bit resistant, trying to turn into that apex, down through this slightly curved straight through towards Dunlop and to the inside, lets the car drift out wide, turns it back in again just to get the traction, the momentum to come through. Good runoff area used there, up through the Schumacher S's. They're going to be pushing 4th gear, and that's a bit wide. Oh, he kicks up the dust on the right, does Visic. Now up into the next left-hander at Kumo. And the car getting a little bit tail happy. Oh, that was a very, very well corrected save before heading through Bidcarver. Now through into Advan. And Visic, I don't think might not be 100% happy with the vehicle after those couple of moments there, Andy. But he makes his way through the NGK chicane.
Yeah, he's made a couple of mistakes, hasn't he, on this lap? So another slightly scrappy effort, and he's sideways into the last corner. This is the trouble when you don't have the tyres up to temperature. Look at that, he's almost completely out of control out of the last corner. Flashes the lights, I think, in sarcasm as much as celebration there. That was not an ideal lap there. And I think, did he even set a lap time? No, he didn't, so it was invalidated. So,
well.
Very entertaining, Alex, but yeah, not a great effort, that.
No, next up we've got Sim RC Endurance Team in the 76. They've got Kevin Brown behind the wheel, and this team has actually won the Thrustmaster 24 Hours of Spa-Francorchamps. So they have won one of the two 24-hour races. This is the second one out of this season. So Kevin Brown could be one of the drivers that could factor in. Yeah, as we said, that as you very rightly put there, that if Visic hadn't gotten the tyres up to temperature, that would have been an absolute handful in these difficult conditions. Because now I've seen that the 166 car is on its outlap, and that will be the Bito Simracing.de Mercedes, the second of the Mercedeses that have qualified for the Super Pole session. Down towards Dunlop goes Kevin Brown in the 76 Aston Martin. And that looks to be a rather neat and tidy exit out of Dunlop through the Schumacher S's. So this team qualified P8 in this session, but at the moment Carlo Delia from DAS in the 832 is the one that has set the benchmark. Nice and neat, a little bit of wider exit going through Kumho and through into Bitkurva. Now they're going to head down in towards Advan. And it's going to be interesting to see now how is Brown going to attack the NGK chicane. Doesn't actually run in too deep and uses the minimal amounts of curb coming through the other side of it. Nice and tight through towards the barriers. So Kevin Brown, the number 76 Sim Racing Endurance Team Aston Martin, crosses the line and goes in and puts in a bit of a barnstormer there by 12 one-thousandths of a second. That was close.
Very close, but very important that actually for Braun, because that car is the only one of our championship contenders, with the exception of the points leaders, Gardy Racing, to make it into this top 10 shootout. So they had to try and put in a good lap there to put some pressure on the points leaders. Remember, the 76 car is 5th in the points on 185 points, Gardy Racing on 244. All of the others really that we've got out there in this top 10 shootout, they're not really in the championship hunt unless a really strange set of circumstances were to befall Gardy Racing over the 24 hours, which may happen. Alex Radizzi though, one of these drivers that just wants to try and snatch a bit of glory, get that limelight in the final top 10 shootout of the season for the split 2 teams, and he too, like the last Mercedes that we saw out there, the 43 car, making a mistake through the left-hander that puts him on the grass and offline into the right. So Radizzi, clearly that's a sequence of corners where the Mercedes is possibly struggling a little bit. We'll see whether or not he has the same sort of problem now when he gets towards the end of the lap through the RTL and Vorsteiner curves. He's a bit wayward there through the Schumacher S's. And so the Mercedes just not quite hooking up the front end on this initial lap. It seems to take this car maybe a bit longer to get up to speed compared with the Aston Martins, who seem pretty good, don't they, in these one-shot showdown format qualifying sessions. But Radizzi a little bit neater, I'd say, than Artak Visic before in the other Mercedes. But let's see whether it's a quick enough time to go to the top at the end.
Right through into the NGK chicane goes Alex Radizzi in the 166 Mercedes. Oh, bit of a moment there. Had to correct the back end stepping out of the chicane. Through the Coca-Cola corner comes Alex Radizzi. Qualified P7 for this session and goes but quickest by just under a tenth ahead of Kevin Brown. Now we're going to see Jonathan Seville from Pulse Sim Sports in one of 2 Audis that has qualified in this session, and Space Pace Esports. Just Tim. Just trying to remember now. I'm trying to remember his surname. You know what it is when you've got so many surnames you're trying to remember. You always have one that slips the net. Druvener, I think it was. Yeah, that was it.
I would have helped you if I could remember, but my memory, I'm afraid, is even worse than yours. So, well, we're getting there.
Yeah, eventually.
Yes.
But yeah, but the Audis have, Seville and Druvener were very, very quick in the first session of qualifying tonight, weren't they?
Yes, and actually Jonathan is a little bit of an outside bet for pole, I think, here, because he was on another good lap in Q1, but invalidated it towards the end, so he could have done a little bit better, I think, than the 6th place that he qualified. He was only just outside of a quarter of a second away from the fastest time, so don't count him out here. If the Audi can get its tyres up to temperature nice and quickly, then it could be a challenger for at least a front row or a top 3 starting position, I think. So been a pretty neat lap this so far from Jonathan, not too spectacular, but again, that's something we've seen, isn't it, so far this season. It's often the laps that look a little bit pedestrian that are the quickest ones when we get to the end of the sessions. So particularly in the top 10 shootouts, where it's maybe more important just to have a clean lap than it is to be all-out attack. I think that is a mistake some drivers make sometimes. They see these top 10 shootouts as a session where you have to go out there and give it absolutely everything on your hot lap, but actually just keep it within the white lines, don't slide wide, don't invalidate it, and you're probably going to end up in the top half of the order come the end of the session. But Seville certainly seems to be going for that sort of strategy. It's a very neat run through the chicane into the Coca-Cola curve. Then the Pulse SimSport Audi, the number 53 car, comes out of the final turn then. A 153.235 to beat. Can he do it? Yes, he can, by a tenth and a half. Seville are the man to beat.
Now the crew that we really need to keep our eyes on. Points leader coming into this round, the 5th and final round of the championship. It is Gardy Racing. with Jakob Osterman behind the wheel of the number 71 Aston Martin V8 Vantage GT3. As we now make our way into the Haughaken on this one and only hot lap, it's a sole chance these drivers have to take with, well, they have to take the bull by the horns and go along for the ride through the Haughaken now into the Mercedes arena. Nice and neat and tidy. Now we saw that Osterman was rather rapid through free practice, was very quick. Stott was initially the quickest car out there in the 20-minute precursor to Superpole earlier on. Managed to put it P5. Great effort for the Aston Martin with a full consignment of 30 kilos of success ballast, following on for the win from the win in Split 2 of the Coach Dave Academy 12 Hours of Kyalami earlier on. Through in towards Dunlop. Looks rather nice and neat and tidy by Osterman at the moment, Andy.
Yeah, this is exactly what we saw from Seville, isn't it? Just keeping it tidy, don't push too hard, and you're very likely to come out of this with a good position. And really, that's what we said in Q1 that Gardi Racing had to do. They just need to have a solid, unspectacular, but generally positive run this weekend, and they should come out the Split 2 champions. They are 33 points clear of second place in the championship, the XL Racing by Renvelt and Aston Martin, but they are nearly 60 points clear of the only other top 10 car in the points that's made it into this top 10 shootout, the 76 car. So realistically, if that's the car they're going to have to beat in this race, they should be odds-on favourite to do so. But of course, they'd still love to try and stick it up there on the front row if they can. Then Osterman hammering the curbs, a much more aggressive line there in the front-engine Aston Martin than we saw from Seville in the mid-engine Audi. You can really wrestle these front-engine cars through the corners a bit more aggressively. Is it going to yield a faster lap time though? No, it's not. He's only third quickest. He is quicker, crucially, than the 76 car, but not on the row for the championship leaders.
Well, 76% of you in that poll that had over the best part of 120 votes saying that with the 71 take pole position, you are absolutely spot on the money. They will start from possibly, I think, maybe top 5 would be a good result for Gardi Racing, but it's Artur Szarsnecki that will now cross the line in the 666 Carbon SimSport Blue McLaren, one of 2 McLarens in this top 10 shootout for Split 2 pole. And Carbon SimSport Blue have also showcased good speed. I mean, Szarsnecki was absolutely well and truly stoked in terms of getting that car really well composed, and maybe the McLarens could be a dark horse here this weekend.
Yeah, I think they will have good single lap pace. I think this car has the potential to go well in this qualifying session. We have 2 McLarens inside the top 4, remember, in Q1. This was the second of those, the fastest of the 2 being the number 23 of Stamankovic. He'll be up in a few minutes' time, but Szarsnecki is a neat little driver. He doesn't make many mistakes, really. He tends to be pretty precise in the way he drives, and that's what you've got to do with this McLaren. It's it can bite if you overdrive it, and I think Artur Szarsnecki is really quite good at getting the most out of it without really pushing it too hard. Takes that really wide middle part of the corner there through the right-hander, maybe a little bit too wide actually there. He didn't quite hook up the second apex as he would have liked, but he's over the curb through the left, right up to the edge of the gravel through the right, and Artur Szarsnecki on what looks like a pretty decent lap here, and the McLarens did look strong in Q1. Now, he made a mistake there, though. I think that was a little bit too wide going into the RTL curve, now into the Vorsteiner curve, down the hill. But that little mistake there, Alex, might just have dropped to a tenth or so, and given how tight this is going to be, that could be all it takes.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the people that are coming up next. I mean, you've got the likes of Amos Lorito, who's been very, very quick in the 521 Wheelspin Esport Ferrari. You've also got Milos Stamankovic, who was at the top of the timesheets as Szarsnecki out of the final corner. What is it going to be for the 666 Carbon SimSport Blue McLaren? It is P3, so not a bad shout. So that at least guarantees that Szarsnecki will start no lower than 6th position. So Osterman could find himself, maybe, because when you think about it, Visic has got an invalidated lap, so the only driver to have done so in this, we've got 6 times. We're now about to have lap time number 7. Amos Lorito In the 521 wheel spin eSport Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo makes its way through the Haughaken. A nice bit of colour on that car as well, but I'm wondering if the Ferrari is also going to really put itself in the mix here in Superpole.
Well, they were decent in that first qualifying session, but as we've made the point a few times, you tend to get a very different result in the Superpole session than you do in Q1, because you just don't have as much time to warm up to it. The lap times in general, well, the fastest lap time in Split 2 Q1 was a 52.6. We're 0.6 of a second away from that at the moment. Most drivers are going at least half a second slower than they were in Q1 because you just don't have the time to get everything into the ideal operating window, and that means that actually it's the cars that are the easiest to drive that often are the quickest in these Superpole sessions. If you've got a car that's pretty compliant and isn't going to try and fire you off into the barriers on cold tyres at every turn of the wheel, then you're going to have a much better bet at challenging at the front. And the Ferrari, I would say, is one of those cars. It's relatively easy to drive compared to some of the others. It's a mid-engine car, but it's not too twitchy, it's not too light, it's not too nervous over the bumps on low pressures. So Amos Lorito here may just be able to take this only Ferrari that made it into the top 10 shootout and stick it on the front row of the grid. A 53.0 is a very beatable target, I would say, if he can really hook things up. It's looked good so far though, hasn't it, Alex?
It has indeed, as Amos Lorito makes his way through the NGK chicane, using a little bit of the runoff coming out of the final turn through into the Coca-Cola corner. The 521 could be a dark horse, as it is rather prancing at the moment, and goes provisional top. 1 minute 52.8 flat. And you know what's funny now? Milos Stamankovic has got the pressure right on him because he's got to try and do this, and 55 people, there was a vote, will the number 53 hang on to pole? 60% were spot on, they said no. So Jonathan Seville, it was 40% said yes, 60% said no. So my question now is, Andy, what can Milos Stamankovic bring to the party? Because the number 23 Rocket Simsport car has a chance. And then it's Tim Druvner that is up next, and he will be the one that will really be feeling the heat under the collar. Stamankovic has just got to apply that little bit more pressure.
Yeah, well, Stamankovic was 7/100ths quicker than Czarnecki in the other McLaren in the earlier session, but he was only about half a tenth quicker than Lorito in the Ferrari, so he did out-qualify, but only just, and it does look like that Ferrari, as I suggested, is just a little bit better on low pressures. It's getting cooler out there as well, of course, so whilst the track in theory is getting quicker the cooler it gets, it also gets harder to get those tyres into the operating window. So the later you go in the session, the more grip you'll have in theory, but actually it might not quite work out that way. So let's see if Stamankovic is going to be able to wring a better lap time out of this number 23 McLaren then, as he winds his way now through the Vorsteiner curve. Again, this has looked neat and tidy so far. The McLaren is a good all-rounder, I'd say. It's mid-engine, so it does get through those tight corners well, but it's also got quite good high-speed stability, which means that through those sweeping S-bends through the middle sector, he should be in good stead. A little bit of curb taken there through the right-hand element of the chicane. One more corner to go. He takes that really tight early apex, which all of the drivers seem to be doing. Lets the car run out wide over the curb at 152.8 exactly is the time he needs to beat, and he's nowhere near. Absolutely nowhere near. There must have been a mistake somewhere that we didn't spot, because he's 6.5 tenths off provisional pole.
That was a 1 minute 53.463 there. That is astounding, absolutely astounding. We've made mention of this earlier on the broadcast. Now it's Tim Knuvner from Space Pace Esports in the 83 Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo has an opportunity. Now, can he put this lap together? The darkness fast setting in. It's 8:22 p.m. here on the server at the virtual recreation of the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, established back in 1984. The Audi looking to make its mark to depose the Cavallino Rampante of Wheelspin Esports, the Ferrari of Amos Lorito, in the battle for the final Super Pole of Season 2 of the SimGrid VCO World Cup. Out of the Mercedes arena comes Tim Knuvner in the 83 making his way down to Valvoline and then into Ford. This is looking to be a pretty committed lap. Knuvner was very, very rapid and was definitely one of the drivers to watch out for in the first session. But could he pull it all together, Andy, and string together 3 brilliant sectors to bring it home for Space Pace Esports in the 83 Audi?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. It's hard to tell, isn't it, sometimes visually? This looks like a neat lap, but is it quick enough? In theory, Knuvner can beat a 52.8 because he did a 52.62 in Q1. We made the point, it's harder to match that lap time in the Super Bowl session, but in fairness, Amos Lorito almost did. He did a 52.74 in Q1, so he's only half a tenth away. Knuvner needs to do a similar sort of thing then, doesn't he? He needs to be right down on his Q1 pace if he is to get onto pole position. He's got a couple more to go then, heads up the hill towards the chicane. As we've said, so easy to get this wrong and throw it all away. Hits the first curb, hits the second curb. That was inch perfect there for Knuvner. He's doing everything right, but is it going to be enough? Out through the final corner then, Amos Lorito's time still stands of a 152.80. Knuvner, the last driver that might be able to beat it, but he can't do it. He's less than 0.2 of a second away, but it will be, Alex, a Ferrari on the pole in split 2.
What a lap from Amos Lorito from Wheelspin Esports. And 34% in the poll said that could anyone beat Lorito's time? Well, it went to 70-30 just now. 30% of you were absolutely spot on out of 54 votes. And it is Wheelspin Esports in the 521 Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo that takes pole ahead of the 2 Audis. Space Pace Esports, and then also Pulse Sim Sport in the 53. And if that wasn't heart-wrenching enough, we've still got split 1 to go, Andy.
I know, it's brilliant, isn't it? I love the way these qualifying sessions build so nicely from split 2 up to split 1. You get sort of your appetizer in the shape of split 2, and now we move on to the main course, the split 1 Super Bowl session. This is always one of the highlights of any SimGrid VCO World Cup event, and this final one, there's just so much to talk about because you've got a 24-hour race in its own right, which is exciting, and the chance to qualify on pole position for a 24-hour race, especially at the highest level of competition really on Assetto Corsa Competizione, that is enough to get anyone excited, I think. But then you throw in the fact that there's a championship to be decided here as well. This is the last of these Super Bowl sessions we'll see this season. And yeah, it does sort of get the heart rate going, doesn't it? This is going to be a fascinating session. And of course, unlike Split 2, we've got quite a few of our championship contenders that were, or at least teams that are mathematically in contention, that are in and around this top 10. So this could be an even more significant session as far as the points are concerned.
Yeah, very much the case, because the biggest news was that Simware Pro did not get through into the top 10. However, looking at it from this perspective, DV1 Triton Racing, who qualified P8 in the session, P2 in the standings. Racing Line Motorsport, the 191 Aston Martin, qualified P9. G2 Esports qualified P7, then 9th in the standings on 159 points. The 720 Carbon Sim Sports are, well, I'm trying to look down the list at the minute, and they are all the way down in 34th position. Yaz Heat Pirelli, the 149, they qualified P5. A big well done to Eamon Murphy. That was a fantastic lap, right at the death. Robbie Stapleford will be behind the wheel of the number 22 Rocket Sim Sport car. But then, of all the teams to see on top of the timesheets after the first 20-minute session, the defending champions, GTWR R8G Academy, putting it on the top time coming into Super Bowl. And you know what they have got here, Andy? Okay, they're 15th in the championship standings on 131 points because of the DNF that they had at Donington Park. But they want to relinquish that title with a bang. And what would that be like? Going out, putting it on pole, and taking the victory in the final round of the season.
Does sort of make a statement, doesn't it? You know, okay, things might not have quite gone our way this season, but counters out at your peril. And you know, looking forward to next season, you know, they'll certainly be looking to try and bounce back then and go a little bit better. So, you know, ending the season on a high can actually work wonders for your confidence moving forward into the next season of competition. So yeah, they'll absolutely be gunning for it. Again, it goes back to this point we were making earlier on about how people come into this event with different agendas. There are those that are trying to score every point for a championship, and those that don't really care and just want to try and get a good result out of the race. So yeah, qualifying the first part of that, sticking yourself on the front row is a good way to go about winning one of these races. And yeah, we'll find out in 20 minutes or so who it is that manages to do it. But yeah, big session this for, in particular, the DV1 Trident squad. They're the ones I'm really excited to see. They'll be third up the 111 car. They need to try and start as high up the order as they can, because of course, Alex, a 24-hour race, in theory, where you start doesn't matter too much, but there will points handed out after the first 6 hours and after the first 12 hours. So actually, starting near the front gives you a far better chance of scoring points at 6 hours than starting down in 25th does.
Indeed, but it looks like we've got someone wanting to come in for... We have got no... We'll try and see if we can... we are going to go to Split 1 qualification. So, effectively, we will go to our top 10 for Super Pole for Split 1 for the 5th and final round of the SimGrid VCO World Cup, the 24 hours of the Nurburgring, which will be starting this coming Saturday, the 2nd of October. It will go twice around the clock around this 3.2 mile circuit, and we await for what happens. So again, as per Split 2 Super Pole, the same is very much the case of for Split 1. So an out lap, a flying lap, and then a cool down lap. Every driver, if they do not if they do a brilliant lap and they don't do a cool down lap, they thereby invalidate their position in the top 10. And there is one of the first of many to go through, which will be Niklas Huben. Now, the first time I ever came across this guy was when I did the 2.4 hours of Imola, and we had him, George Boothby, and Tobias Grönwald. Grönwald now with Unicorns of Love these days, and Huben took the victory in that, and that was one hell of a race. But Niklas Huben, we've seen it in the previous session with the Audis. They are rather capable around here, so Niklas Huben will be the one that sets the benchmark. Then it will be Marek Shins for Racing Line Motorsport, Tuskovic for Triton Racing, Niles Noyox for G2 Esports, and effectively that is just the first 4 here, Andy. I think Huben's got to put down a big marker to really start scaring people a little bit in this Super Pole session.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this, isn't it? Because there was a bit of a gulf in Q1. The first 4 were covered by 0.2 of a second, but then you jumped back a 10.5 to find Eamon Murphy in 5th, and then you had that whole group of them that were over half a second away from the fastest time. So, yeah, I do think we're going to see maybe a session of 2 halves here. Maybe the second half of the session is where we're really going to see the quick times, but we have seen it before, as we've said, teams that scrape into that top 10, able to, you know, if not get pole position, certainly better themselves. So Huben, he crept in by a couple of hundredths of a second, just about managed to get 10th place in Q1. Don't be surprised if he puts himself up a row or 2 on the grid now, given a second opportunity. But yeah, we'll find out. The Audi did look very drivable, didn't it, in that previous session on cold tyres, and that will serve him well, I think.
Yeah, 25 kilos of ballast on this Audi. Nevertheless, out of this corner comes Niklas Huben, and he's now going to start making his way through into the Haughaken, the first part of it. Very tight right-hander that literally now comes back onto itself. It's pretty much like a 180, and then through into the sweeping double left here at the Mercedes Arena. That's where you see all the AMG logos on the right-hand side of your screens on the main picture-in-picture. Huben now switches it over to the right-hand side, takes a little bit of curve there, uses a little bit of runoff coming out of that corner, and now makes his way through into Valvoline and Muller's the 2 curbs into oblivion, like literally sent them exit stage right, makes his way through Ford, now through into Dunlop. The Audi does look really planted. I mean, sometimes with success ballast, even in the dry, that can help with the centre of gravity distribution on these cars.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, we assume that it's going to hurt your performance, and it might do in outright pace, but that's not necessarily what this session is about. It's not really about being the fastest out there. I know that's a strange thing to say in a qualifying session, but it's about being the cleanest, making the fewer mistakes, and that is helped by having a really well-balanced car, and the Audi always has been really tremendously well-balanced. It is a really good, fun car to drive this, and it can be a little bit punishing if you get it wrong, but once you get it in the sweet spot, it is an absolute joy to drive, makes a good noise, and this particular one, I have to say, looks rather nice as well. I do like the silver, black and blue livery on the Retronic car, but let's see how fast it is. That's what really matters. Comes out of the chicane, ooh, in the dirt. I hope he didn't invalidate it. I don't think he did, but he was certainly slightly outside of the track limits there, a bit wide of the apex at Coca-Cola as well. The benchmark time then in split 1, top 10 shootout, is a 152.803. His lap time in the earlier session of 52.49, so he's not a million miles away from that. That's a decent first effort, that, for Human.
And also 3/1000ths shy of Amos Lolito's pole time in split 2.
Yeah, yes.
With 25 kilos of ballast on board. Now it's Marek Shins in the 191 Racing Line Motorsport. And the Aston Martin makes its way through into the Haukaken. Very much I do like some of the liveries that we always see here in not just the World Cup, but the sim grid in general. There's some very good brand identities, isn't there, Andy?
There is. I mean, they're professional-looking cars. These liveries would not look out of place on a real-world GT3 grid, and again, it just all adds to the immersion, really. You know, this is sim racing, after all. It's not the real thing, but you do sort of forget that sometimes when you're watching the qualifying sessions, watching the races, and certainly working on them, as we've had the luxury of doing this season. You really do sort of forget that this is all virtual. But yeah, the teams have done a great job designing the liveries themselves, of course, and yeah, bringing in sponsorship to help them race, and yeah, help them develop themselves and develop their drivers to be as fast as possible. And Marek Shins here trying to go as fast as possible in the 191 Aston Martin. Again, looks like a decent lap, this. We saw in the early part of the split 2 qualifying sessions that the Aston Martins also seem to be able to switch on pretty quickly, and that definitely helps you in this Super Pole format. Let's see though whether it's going to be enough to beat a 52.803. That is a strong lap, that, from Nicholas Huben. But Marek Shins looks like he's maybe just attacking a little bit more. That doesn't always mean faster, does it? But it certainly looks like he's really giving it everything.
Right, Marek Shins makes his way through into the NGK chicane for the final part of his hot lap. Through into the Coca-Cola corner, tight on the apex, allows the car to run a little bit wide coming out of it. So 152.803 to beat. Marek Shins crosses the line and instantly goes just over 0.2 of a second quicker. 1 minute 52.590 is going to be the time to beat. And next up, it's Mateusz Tyszkiewicz from DV1 Triton Racing, the only Bentley that has qualified through to this. But also another big absentee from this is the Sim Racing Masterclass, the 777. You spoke with Raymond Murphy earlier on after Zahid Esser took the car out for qualifying, and you know, Sim Racing Masterclass, 30 kilos of ballast down that car after the win at Kyalami. Hurt their qualifying, but as you said earlier, this might determine the grid for Saturday, but it won't necessarily determine the finishing order for what happens on Sunday afternoon when we crown our Season 2 SimGrid VCO World Cup champions.
Yeah, absolutely. 0 points on offer for qualifying on pole in this session. A few bragging rights, maybe, but it doesn't actually score anything towards your championship total. I do feel good, though, about DV1 Triton Racing's championship chances this weekend, because we've seen this sort of yo-yo season for every single team out there. A team will do well in one race, they'll carry ballast into the next as a result, and then struggle. And ideally, I think you wanted a slightly bad penultimate round of the championship at Kyalami, which is exactly what DV1 Triton had. They had a 19th place finish last time, which means their ballast is reduced then coming into the finale, and here they are significantly quicker than Simware Pro, who finished 4th place last time out. So I think you want to be quick in the 24-hour races, and DB1 Triton Racing are looking quick here as we come into this final 24-hour race, and indeed final race of the season, with 160 points on offer. They're only 46 off the top coming into it. This has been a good lap as well for Mateusz Tuszkiewicz. The higher up the grid he can start, the more chance he has of this team scoring points after that crucial 6-hour mark in particular. But just how far up the grid will he be? Can he beat Marek Szintz's 1 minute 52.590? Let's find out. Out of the Coca-Cola curve, across the start-finish line, the 111 car does go to the top by an enormous 6/1000ths of a second. It is very, very tight at the top.
I just like how you did that. It seemed like Dominic Blyer, his teammate, was cheering him on in the YouTube chat. But here we go. It's now time for Munich's finest, the BMW M6 GT3 of Niels Norris from BMW Team G2 Esports. Still currently in the hunt. 9th in the standings on 159 points. So Noyox got the car into P7 in the initial 20-minute session. Now, BMW Team G2 Esports did have a win at Donington Park. They had a 16th and an 18th at Bathurst and Spa, respectively. Kyalami wasn't really one to write home about because of the fact that they had the full 30 kilos of ballast. But Noyox always delivers when the pressure is put on him, and he seems to thrive under that kind of situation as well. Some drivers do thrive under pressure, don't they, Andy?
Well, absolutely, and this is a high pressure situation, and the more that you do this, the more experience you get of high pressure situations as a driver, or indeed in any industry, then the better equipped you are to deal with that. And Niels Noyox is a really, really calm driver. He's a safe pair of hands, isn't he? The BMW, though, is not renowned for its one-lap pace, so I don't know whether this is going to be enough to go for pole position. They managed to get a decent lap out of it in that first part of qualifying, didn't they? 152.461, so that's what he's going to have to aim for here, I think, to beat Tuszkiewicz. Tuszkiewicz with a 52.584 was only about a tenth of a second away from his Q1 time, so Noyox is going to have to work hard here to go quicker than the Bentley, but this, so far, Alex, looks like a good lap.
Yep, so Niels Noyox makes his way through into the NGK chicane. BMW having a little bit of wheels going into the air, but nevertheless he keeps it nice and calm and composed through the Coca-Cola corner. So the time to beat, 1 minute 52.584. Niels Noyox across the line only goes P3, 72 thousandths off.
So already Marek Szync is thinking, right, good, I'm going to start higher up the order than it looked after Q1, because he was 9th fastest in Q1. He's now guaranteed at least 8th fastest, so already we're seeing the order jumble slightly, aren't we? Now, Mikhail Novakovsky, this should be a quick lap. We've got 3 McLarens in this Super Pole session. That's more than, equal actually to Audi. There are 3 McLarens and 3 Audis in the session. It is almost all mid-engine cars from here on in, really, with only the Unicorns of Love Aston Martin, the only front-engined interloper. But Novakovsky, I think, could just steal a decent result here. He did a 52.335 in the previous session. He was over a full tenth quicker than the next fastest driver, which was Niels Noyox in the BMW. So I do think that this could be, Alex, a car that might well challenge, maybe not for pole position, but certainly front couple of rows for Novakovsky.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that sentiment there, Andy, but Novakovsky now making his way through towards Dunlop. He's just gone through the first sector out of 3. Tight line taken by the McLaren. Nice and clean there by Novakovsky. Uses the green runoff area as much as he dare through. Now they're pushing 4th gear. Oh, that was very, very close to the dust on the right-hand side coming through the Schumacher S's. And up towards RTL now through into Warsteiner. So Novakovsky keeping it nice and clean. Might have had a little bit of a slightest amount of moment going through RTL, but not much to waver him. He's going to go through into Advan now, and that car's going to be pushing well over 230 plus kilometres now into the braking zone for the NGK chicane. So this will be the halfway stage of the Super Pole for splits 1. Novakovsky through the final corner. What's the 720 McLaren from Carbon Simsport with Mikhail Novakovsky behind the line going to put in? Goes across the line, goes P1 by 93 thousandths, my apologies, 1 minute 52.491. This is close.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. 3 of them covered by less than a tenth at the moment, but Nowakowski with a really, really good lap of 52.491, tenth and a half off what he did in Q1. Now, Eamon Murphy was exciting to watch in Q1, wasn't he? The Yassi Pirelli McLaren with this bright yellow and black Bumblebee livery on it is now buzzing its way through the Mercedes arena here on its lap in the session. Now, it is, of course, carrying a decent amount of ballast coming into this final race. Is that going to hurt it? The McLaren, I think it probably carries the weight quite well, but being mid-engined, the balance of that weight and where it is distributed in the car is possibly a little bit more significant than if you were in a front-engine Aston Martin, perhaps. The mid-engine cars can be a bit more sensitive to these things. But Eamon Murphy, who did a 52.278 in Q1, looking to try and emulate that again. We are seeing, aren't we, Alex, that the drivers in Split 1, and this has been a theme of the season, they tend to get a lot closer to their Q1 times in the Super Bowl sessions than the Split 2 drivers are able to do. Again, just another example of how talented these drivers are.
They would have been practicing this format on every single circuit when the calendar was announced earlier on this year. And, you know, they put an immense amount of time behind the wheel. A lot of wheel time, because they say the practice does make perfect, but you can also see how the car reacts to different temperature settings, so you can be prepared for any eventuality. But Eamon Murphy, was outside of the top 10 on his last lap as the checkered went out. He flew across the line, and there was no doubt at all that we were waiting for something from Eamon Murphy, and he definitely delivered. He's coming out of the final corner. So the time to beat is a 1 minute 52.491. Eamon Murphy betters that by just over a tenth, a 1 minute 52.380. And we still have, Andy McEwan, 4 more cars to go. Next up is Robbie Stapleford in another McLaren 720S, this time for Rocket Simsport.
Yeah, I honestly think we're going to see the times come down even more than that. People are managing to dig deep in this session, aren't they, and just find that extra chunk of time that they need. Robbie Stapleford then, the number 22 car, which makes its way through the first sequence of corners now. Exactly the same car as the one that we've just seen out in the hands of Eamon Murphy. We've got a McLaren 1-2, of course, at the moment. It would be a brilliant result if McLaren could get themselves the top 3 positions. It would be rather fitting given McLaren's form of late in certain elements of real-world motorsport. Their GT3 programme has always been particularly strong, and with the arrival of the 720S a few seasons ago, it really stepped up to that next level, didn't it? Rocket Simsport, of course, affiliated with McLaren for quite some time. Robbie Stapleford looking to really give them the best possible result in this qualifying session to set them up nicely for the championship decider. Again, they are not in championship contention, this team. They're just looking for the best result they can possibly get. And so far, so good, I'd say. This has been a suitably aggressive lap, inch perfect so far, really, using every bit of the track available. And Stapleford really is gunning here for Eamon Murphy's 152.38.
What was Robbie's time in Q1, Andy?
Robbie did a 52.146.
Okay, so that gives plenty of scope. I mean, I think, you know what they say, when it looks slow, normally it is fast. I mean, Stapleford has, as you said, has kept this really calm and composed, and I think this could be a real telltale sign of what we could expect over 2 times around the clock.
Yeah, certainly that's what they're hoping for, isn't it? Let's see then, out of the last corner, across the start-finish line then, Stapleford a 52.38 to beat, and he beats it a 52.131. That is faster than he went in Q1. That is the first driver across either Split 2 or Split 1 that has beaten their Q1 time in Superpole. That is massively, massively impressive, and if he hangs on to pole position now, Alex, that will be really well deserved.
Right, Bastian Richter has got the work to do. But Robbie Stapleford has given us the biggest talking point tonight, putting it on provisional pole as now Bastian Richter from Unicorns of Love, and already the unicorn emojis have been spamming the YouTube chat at the moment. We've got And that's why Rocket Simsport promoted Robbie Stapleford. His SRO performances speak volumes, and he's just got to prove that tonight. But Bastian Richter from Unicorns of Love, the first time I came across Bastian was at the British Classics at Silverstone late last year. First event I did for SimGrid, and a very, very known quantity in sim racing. And funnily enough, Bastian Richter qualified in the SRO Esports Sprint Series last Friday at this very track in this car. And with track knowledge, because of his... But they haven't got ballast at all, so Bastian Richter could really bring something to the party. Now, I did see that we did have a time in the 151s in the first part of qualifying, didn't we?
Yeah, and I didn't expect to see another one, to be honest, but given what Stapleford just did, maybe it might happen. But Richter could do with a good lap here, really. Unicorns have looked 10th in the points. They're within 100 of the top, though, and given Simware Pro's difficulties so far tonight, qualifying outside the top 20 for the 24 hours, the championship leaders could be in trouble. Let's see if Richter can put the Unicorns of Love one step closer to the championship battle. Then out of the final corner, the car to come through and set a lap time, and it is second, and it almost matches Stapleford. 33 1,000ths of a second away. Bastian Richter only just outside of his Q1 effort, in fairness, and had his mighty close. Maybe that Stapleford time is beatable after all.
Well, we got two Audis, and first up from WPS Racing Team, it is Dennis Schoeninger. Last out will be Tobias Pfeffer for GTWR R8G Academy in the 157. And you know what's really funny? The last two cars going out, we had an Audi to kickstart things off, courtesy of Rutronic E-Racing's Niklas Huben. What if Audi was to give us the biggest surprise and we end up with an all-Ingolstadt front row for the race on Saturday? Wouldn't that be something epic?
It would be fitting, wouldn't it, really, here at the Nurburgring, but we know there are also some penalties that may well be handed out to drivers at the start of the race as well, which we'll get into on Saturday afternoon, I'm sure, in more detail. But for antics last time out at Kyalami, I believe these two teams that are still to go in this Super Bowl session may well be affected by that. So yes, they'd like to start at the front of the grid, but how much good that will do them, well, we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, for the time being, they won't be thinking about that. Dennis Schoeninger will just be looking for the best possible time here to put the number 21 Audi onto the top of the time. So his Q1 effort was a 52.0. A 52.0 would put him on provisional pole position now, but only one man so far, Robbie Stapleford, has been able to match or indeed better his Q1 time. So if Schoeninger's going to do this, he has to do something that certainly, I mean, the odds aren't exactly in his favour, are they? But Schoeninger is a really quick driver. He's capable of rising to the occasion, and he's making his way now through that chicane towards the Coca-Cola curve. The WPS Racing Team will be on the edges of their seats. Can Schoeninger do it and put the 21 car onto provisional pole position? Across the start-finish line he goes then. There is the line, and yes, he can by a tenth of a second.
Whoa.
Schoeninger with a 52.026. He is a couple of hundredths of a second faster than he went in Q1. But Tobias Pfeffer went quicker than that in Q1, Alex. Here he comes towards the start of his lap. Can he do it again to take pole position away?
Right, the Season 1 champions have Tobias Pfeffer behind the wheel of the Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo. The 157 is the 20th and final car. So now there is a poll out. It started and there's 18 votes already literally within 1 second. Tobias Pfeffer has to beat a 1 minute 52.026. He's got to keep it calm and composed. Schoeninger has set the benchmark. Pfeffer's got to do the absolute utmost. And as Andy McEwan rightly pointed out, there are some penalties to be served at the beginning of this race, but we won't go into that because what we're interested in is who is going to put it on pole. And Pfeffer now making his way through into Valvoline, into the next right-hander here at Ford, for the slight Parabolica-esque straight going through into Dunlop. And already I'm just going to see what the ratio is. It's 66 say that Pfeffer to get pole. They've said yes, and that's going to We've already had 67 votes in climbing. Now we're north of 70. Pfeffer making his way through the Schumacher S's, not taking too much curb, nearly putting a wheel on the gravel there, but keeps it nicely planted. Through into RTL goes the Audi, nice and tight on the apex, allows the car to run wide, sweeps it back over to the left, pulls it back in to go through Warsteiner. Now just the Advan corner, the NGK chicane and Coca-Cola to go. Pfeffer in the 157 GTWR R8G Academy Audi R8 LMS, sparks flying from the diffuser through the NGK chicane. Will it be enough to beat a 1 minute 52.026? He's out of the final corner, pedal to the metal. Pfeffer across the line. What's the time going to be?
Yes.
It is by 24,000, so 1 minute 52.002. Tobias Pfeffer nails it at the death. Wow.
Wow is the word, isn't it? I mean, that is as close as you like it. And Tobias Pfeffer, by the narrowest of margins, has managed to do it. He's not quite as quick as he went in Q1, but it doesn't matter. He was quick enough. He had a 10th in hand in that first session. I'm sure he will tell you that he always expected to get pole position, but my word, that was quite the effort there, quite the session as well, and really typifies the competitive nature of these Super Pole sessions all season long in the SimGrid VCO World Cup. That I rather enjoyed, Alex.
To be honest with you, it's a fitting aperitif for the main course that's going to come this coming Saturday for the fifth and final round. A journey of best part of 6 months, 5 different circuits. And just looking at it, all right, the top 10 from Tobias Pfeffer all the way down to Niklas Huben. 8 tenths separated the top 10 in Superpole for Split 1. But I did say, what if an Audi front row might provisionally happen? I think I made the wish come true and I didn't jinx anything. But you have to feel for people like, say, Bastian Richter was so close to taking 3rd place off of Robbie Stapleford. But, this race has got so much gunning for it. There's so much in prospect, and I really can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, me neither. And that is, as we've said, really only part of the story, because we've got this 24-hour race to go. We know that the 157 and the 21 car, they each have this stop-and-go 30-second penalty to serve towards the start of the race on Saturday, but I think given their pace that they've got here, the fact it's a 24-hour race, they can bounce back from that, I'm pretty sure of it. And if they can get a really good start, escape the usual turn 1 lunacy in one piece, they might just be able to get away with it. Right then, let's have a word, shall we, with the man of the moment. Tobias Pfeffer joins us in the commentary box. Tobias, what a lap. That was super close, as it always is. Did you think that you'd be able to beat that lap time set by Dennis Schoeniger?
I actually didn't know he was doing also a 52-0 because no teammate watched at me, so I was all alone on myself. So yeah, I mean, I did my best, Actually, 52-1 was like mind-blowing for Super Pole. So yeah, I don't know. I was trying my best, but I wasn't sure if I am able to do it.
Yeah, those Super Pole sessions, they're really difficult, aren't they? Because, in Q1, you've got 20 minutes, you can settle into it, get the tyres up to temperature, find your rhythm, and you only really need to put in a good lap in the second half of the session. But here, you've got to do it on cold tyres. Is the Audi, do you think, particularly good on cold tyres? It certainly seemed like in that session, the Audi drivers were able to get a little bit more out of their cars than some of the others.
I mean, my setup was a bit sketchy, when the pressures weren't on the optimum level, So it was a bit scary in the first sector. Actually, I lost a bit of time there, but yeah, I mean, I can't compare it with other cars, but it's not easy to drive for the first lap. But it's not perfect on optimum grip,
Interesting. That's it. So it wasn't the car; it was all down to the driver. Then is that right?
I mean, the car was really good, but still it was a bit sketchy in the first sector. So yeah, but it was a bit hard. But yeah, I mean,
it was a fantastic effort though, and it puts you in a good position for the race. But I don't want to dwell on it too much. You do have this penalty to serve, though. Given the speed that you have, though, and the fact it's a 24-hour race, I think you're still in contention, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 24-hour race, so yeah, everything is possible, So let's see.
What's the game plan then for that first stint of the race? So you've got to try and hold the lead into turn 1, I suppose, and then really put in qualifying laps right from the get-go.
Yeah, exactly. I think after a stop and go, you have to drive 3 more laps. That's the maximum you can do. So I mean, we will do pushing crazy in the first 3 laps. So yeah, and then see how it's going in the race.
In a slightly frustrating season for you as a team, though, so it must be quite nice to be here at the final round. You know you're on the pace, you know there's still a chance you could win this race. What would it mean to the team to get a race victory here to round out the season?
I mean, it would be really nice because we had we were really unlucky the whole season. I don't know, my pedal broke and stuff. So yeah, I was really unlucky, but it would be really nice. I mean, we were really happy if we could win this. So yeah, let's see. I mean, yeah, we can probably get P3 in the championship, if I'm correct. If some guys are having some bad positions, so everything is possible. It's a 24-hour race, so let's see. But we would be really happy to be on the podium or P1.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. You're 50 points behind third place, and there are 160 still available. So, Tobias, keep your chin up. Congratulations on pole position, though. That was massively entertaining to watch, and we wish you the best of luck for Saturday.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.
So, Tobias Pfeffer then on the pole position for the race on Saturday, Alex, and I think he's a little bit surprised actually at how tough that was. I don't think he expected that pace from the likes of Dennis Schoeniger, but when it mattered, Tobias was still able to find enough speed to stick that Audi on the pole position.
I think he's going to get a very big virtual pat on the back by Giorgio Simonini. That's for damn sure, because that's why Tobias is with that crew, and they've done their level best to try and defend their title. It hasn't worked out the way that the team was looking coming into the season. They were hopefully going to get off with a bang in the first part of the year, but it didn't really quite play out. But I think nevertheless they're very good, well-deserving defending champions, and I'm looking forward to seeing the likes of them and WPS bring the fight to the rest of the teams that are going to be battling over twice around the clock come this Saturday, Andy. I mean, of all the places to kick things off at Mount Panorama was a really good start, and then to have Spa, have Donington, have Kyalami, and to have things finish off here at the Nurburgring, it's been a really solid Canada for season 2 of the SimGrid VCO World Cup. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, a good variety of circuit there. You've had a bit of everything. The old school classics like Bathurst and Spa, Donington Park. I mean, it's been a long time since Donington Park has hosted a real world endurance race at this sort of level. So really nice to see it included in the SimGrid VCO World Cup. Kyalami was an absolute thriller last time as well, and I've got a feeling that this one's going to be the same. The Nürburgring, it always produces good racing. We've got a really competitive grid now. And this championship battle, it's going to keep us guessing the whole way. Can Simware Pro dig themselves out of this hole they've got themselves in? I know they're carrying ballast, but they'll still be disappointed, I think, to be starting so deep in the grid, whilst DV1 Triton Racing have managed to get themselves right up towards the pointy end. Remember that 111 Bentley is going to start the race from 7th on the grid, and they're only 46 points back. So that in itself is going to be a fascinating story. And then you throw in all of these other teams like GTWR who just want to try and end the year with a win. It's going to be what I would say is an unmissable race come Saturday afternoon. And I think if it's anything like the rest of the season, your eyes are going to be glued to it for the full 24 hours.
Yep, so this coming Saturday, just before 12 o'clock Central European Summertime, the 5th and final round of the SimGrid VCO World Cup gets underway. 24 hours of the Nürburgring, and we have a fantastic commentary crew as well. We've got Lewis McGlade, David Christie, Anna McEwan, who's joined me tonight, Nick Foster, and also Paul Jeffrey. So on behalf of Andy and myself, Alex Goldschmidt, thank you very much for everyone for tuning in for what's been the most exciting qualifying session of the SimGrid VCO World Cup. Join us just before 12 noon Central European summertime this coming Saturday, the 2nd of October. And believe me, you will be entertained as we get underway with the 24 hours of the Nurburgring. Don't forget to follow us on all the relevant social media channels. And if you haven't already, hit the like, share and subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much for watching and joining us this evening. We'll see you Saturday as we get the final round underway here in the Eifel regions of Germany. Thank you and good night.
Virtual